meet you and
Thank
have
you.
a time to sit down with our Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams. Prior to being Borough President, you were a senator, a New York State Senator for 4 terms.
Yes.
And a New
3.5, we say.
Okay. And a New York City police officer for 22 years.
Yes.
So you know New York
I
inside
like to feel
and out.
that way. Yes, yes, yes.
With your lifestyle in policy and reform, I'm curious how your journey with being whole food plant-based has then transferred into your work life.
I believe that, people often ask, how did this journey really incorporate into, number one, being an elected official, but I also came from an occupation where we are just known, or we were known for having bad food habits.
Yeah, I'm thinking donuts and cops.
Without a doubt. I tell people all the time.
Is that
it's
true?
It's not a rumor. We love donuts, jelly, glaze, chocolate, and something happens when you leave the police academy. All of a sudden you turn into this like Dunkin' Donut person, and all of a sudden you crave donuts. But it was the combination of both the careers. Both the careers put me on a pathway because of the hours. I did midnights for almost 13 years, and access to good food was extremely challenging. And then as an elected official, you go from event to event to event, and everywhere you go, there's food in front of you. So the pathway of diabetes, heart disease, cancers, if you were to do an analysis of elected officials and police officers, they probably have an overwhelming number, a disproportionate number of people who are experiencing some form of healthcare crises, because that is our life. Bad food equal bad health. And those 2 occupations really, if they personify what bad food and bad health represents.
When did you get your diagnosis that you had type 2 diabetes? That was when you're in public eye?
Yes. And it was extremely challenging because I was the borough president at the time, and I was out of the country, and when I was experiencing discomfort in my stomach, and I thought it was colon cancer because I lost a friend to colon cancer. And when I returned to the country, I went to the doctor, and at the time I was also experiencing, tingling in my hands and feet, and vision loss, more severe in my left eye. I basically lost the vision in my left eye, and I was losing it in my right. And it was interesting, and I'm probably the typical male, like my sisters growing up, they would be the doctors, for every little thing, they had easy pass to the doctor. Men, it's like suck it up, ignore the tingling, shake it off. Particularly from the days of sports, you have a tendency to just say, you know what, it will.
You're going to tough it out.
Yeah, it will wear off. But little did I know, after going to check my stomach, which turned out to be an ulcer, and I found out that not only my vision loss and the tingling in my hands and feet, they were associated with a severe case of diabetes.
So then what was the next steps for you to seek treatment or to think that you could reverse it?
It was fascinating what my thought of mine and the next steps in my mind after hearing that. There was a brief moment when I basically said, well, you know what, you knew this was coming. Your mother's diabetic, your sisters and brothers are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. Just about everyone in our family, my cousins and nieces and nephews, we all have the tales of insulin and drugs associated with diabetes. So there was a brief moment when I said, you knew this was coming. And then when the doctor said that, you know what, you're going to lose your sight. And that tingling is nerve damage that can lead to amputation, and you're going to be on medicine the rest of your life. And I was like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. I thought that
overwhelming news.
Right. We sweetened diabetes in our community. We turned it into auntie has a little sugar. So we made the diagnosis something that was really palatable and comforting and an expectation, and you could just go around and function. No one really gives you the other part of the diagnosis. Number 1 cause of blindness, leading cause of non-trauma limb amputation, can lead to kidney failure, heart disease. that part of the story you don't hear. And I just said, wait a minute. I always considered myself as a disruptor. You know, throughout my law enforcement career, I was a disruptor about police should be more tolerant and we should have a fairer police environment. I was a disruptor in politics on what we should do. So I always consider myself a disruptor. And I said, well, if I could be a disruptor as a computer programmer in my early policing career, fighting against police abuse, then I need to be a disruptor about health. And when I put in the Google, I did a Google search, I did not put in living with diabetes. I put in reversing diabetes. And that came from within my spirit of, you know, you need to go beyond what is and turn it into what it ought to be. And all the information came up, and sorting through all those other wild things, I drilled down on stuff that, you know, just was the research was there. And I was able to cross check. And I say, okay, let me pinpoint this.
Doctors' number one thing is don't go Google, you know, for health advice. Please don't do that.
Right, right.
So when you came back to your doctors with what you found from searching online, what was their reaction?
And it's fascinating because, you know, I went to 5 of the best doctors in the city in the area of diabetes. And my internists and endocrinologists all told me, here's who you should go to. This was on their list of, hey, if I was diabetic, this is who I would go to. And they're innovative. They have a fresh outlook on it. And they all had the same stale outlook. They were all telling me the same thing. You know, and when I was asking the one question, what I found fascinating, I said, how did I get diabetes? Mm-hmm. You would have thought after so many years of treating patients, they would have had a real understanding. But that I received different views on how I got diabetes. Too much carbs, it's hereditary, runs in your family, all of these different things. And so when I stated that, listen, I want to look this up, I was told, you know, don't look at the internet, don't search. But I said to myself, listen, man, you were a former cop. You know how to do investigations, and you know how to read. This is not magic, you know? And so what you find as doing your own research is make you smarter to ask questions. You shouldn't take just your research, you know, because doctors went through medical school for a reason, but you should at least be able to sit down and have an intelligent conversation. And when I started to talk to my doctors based on what I read, they couldn't give me intelligent answers. That troubled me. And when I found those doctors like Dr. Greger, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Barnard, and others, when I started to speak with them, particularly Dr. Esselstyn, it just made sense. And he says, come see me. And I decided to take a trip down to the Cleveland Clinic and speak with him.
What was the next steps on your journey? Like you mentioned, you were used to graveyard shifts mm-hmm. when you were, you know, captain of the police, to then politician life and, you know, running from event to event. How did you make the transition to preparing your own food and embarking on this whole new diet and lifestyle?
And it's really, that's the powerful term, making that transition. And it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. And that is a big difference from a diet. A diet is something that you may do for a short period of time, but a lifestyle change. I had to make a lifestyle change. And that's not an easy thing to do, particularly when you don't believe. When you feel as though this is something that everyone else in the medical profession is saying no to. So you're actually going against the norm. Yeah. You want to believe your doctors. You know, they represent that which we believe good health is supposed to be. And so once I broke free of saying that, listen, I'm going to go against the traditional opinions and decided to look on my own, is hearing from someone like Dr. Essie, I decided, based on the instructions he gave me, I had nothing to lose. It was either a lifetime of medicine, vision loss, nerve damage, going down the spiraling decline of health, because everyone who is pumping themselves with medicine, their kidneys are being disrupted, They end up on dialysis anyway, many limb amputations. And so I said, make the decision, and my decision was I'm going to try something different. I'm not going to go down the path that everyone else traveled down.
Did you have to learn how to cook?
Yes, yes, I did. My diet consisted of toast, and I would burn that half the time. And I used to say that's the way it's supposed to be. Burnt toast is better. And I just made the decision that, okay, throw yourself in. And when I started, my food was so horrendous. I said, if I got to eat this crap, it was just, I used to make this morning cereal with flax seeds without grinding the flax seeds. It was just terrible. And I just pushed through. And I decided, let me, go online and do a search on plant-based meals and vegan meals. And I started experimenting with spices. I took it slow because it was a lifestyle change. So I didn't worry about my stumbles, my falls, my mishaps. I dedicated one day a week on Sundays as experimenting with meals, because during the week, oftentimes you're rushing. So I learned different ways of making access to food easy for me. I bought a veggie bullet, and I chopped up my veggies and put them in plastic bags. So during the week, I could just grab a handful. I would freeze my berries for my smoothies in the morning. So I made my life easier. I became more prepared during the weekend, so I would be ready during the week. And then I started experimenting with meals, making my own cheese, making my own cereal, mixing nutritional yeast to get the cheesy taste. I started experimenting with different spices beyond what I knew before. I knew salt, pepper, and cinnamon, and that was a wrap. And then I started doing cumin and oregano and so many other spices, and I was really starting to explore these different tastes and creating a regimen, my go-to meals, and then meals I can have when I have time to cook. And it's just so enjoyable and therapeutic. I would finish my meals back in the day, and I would say, like that old commercial, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, I can't believe I ate the whole thing, and I would feel guilty. Now when I finish a meal, I know that, hey, that cumin that you just had is going to go to do this. That garlic is going to go to do this. The nutmeg and all of these different spices and all of the kale you just ate is going to help this. I know.
They're all working for you.
And
all you have to do is just eat it.
Right, and not against you. And that's so important. It's a different feeling that you know that you are putting things in your body that is going to help you and heal you and actually do the right things for you, not against you.
How long on your lifestyle change was it until you started seeing results?
3 weeks. 3 weeks after.
3 weeks.
3 weeks after going to a whole food plant-based diet, my vision cleared up.
Wow.
Right. The doctor told me to turn in my eyeglasses when I was first diagnosed with vision loss. Turn in my driver's license, because she stated you could no longer legally drive. You're legally blind. You could no longer drive.
Wow.
3 weeks later, my vision cleared up. 3 months later, all my nerve damage went away in my hands and feet. My cholesterol normalized, my PSA normalized, my blood pressure normalized. That ulcer that sent me to the hospital in the first place, the doctor, went away, no medicine. They gave me 3 medicines for my ulcer, and it completely went away without taking any of the medicines at all. So when I returned to the doctor, and the doctor looked at my numbers when they took my blood test for my A1C, they said, hey, this is really, the medicine is working. I put the full bottles of medicine on the desk, and I said I never took the medicine. Instead, I went to a whole food plant-based diet.
With such a profound positive change in a short amount of time, then how did you jump to becoming a plant-based leader? Because now, just within the last year alone, there's been so much policy change, and you've been really at the crux of it, of bringing Meatless Mondays to all public schools in the New York City area, and our public hospitals, and now our correctional facilities as well.
When I saw my recovery, when I saw the weight loss, when I saw my body finally normalized. When I saw all those things and then turned my attention over to my mom, and she was diabetic for 15 years and on insulin for 7 years. And then mom went on a whole food plant-based diet, and in 2 months she was off her insulin. And although she has a Southern diet and she struggles, but at the same time she's empowered to know that there are things she can do, and that's important. Then I realized that how much her diabetes, her heart disease, her kidneys issues, her all of those issues, her arthritis, how much the food was really had her in prison, and I knew how much it hijacked her life. I said, imagine how many mothers, I don't know anyone that can't talk about their parents going through some form of chronic disease. And if I could just, number one, give them hope, alleviate the anxiety and burden of a family member that is going through a chronic disease, and start the conversation of how do we reverse diseases. That is what got me into saying, listen, this is the number one issue that is facing us as not only Americans, but human beings. There's a crisis. 30 million people have diabetes. 74 million people are pre-diabetic. 7 million are like me, were not aware that diabetes. Number one cause of death in this country is heart disease, and it's preventable and reversible, and we're not doing anything about it. We continue to treat symptoms and not underlying causes. It had to change, and people were ready. When we started talking about meatless Mondays in schools, the students were ready. When we started engaging in the conversation about meatless Mondays in our correctional facilities, our hospitals, we're going after ACS. We're going after all the places that our tax dollars feed people. We should not be feeding the crises. And this is simple math. This is not complicated. And it's a while that some people don't see the possibilities, but people are starting to hear and understand that we can turn around the healthcare crisis, which is not sustainable. We cannot sustain our current healthcare system. It's not sustainable. It's going to bankrupt this country if we do not do something differently. And I'm really concerned about the leaders who are running for president. No one is talking about disease reversal. No one is having a conversation about our overconsumption of meat, how it kills our environment and it kills our bodies. So not only does a whole food plant-based diet helps Dolly the cow, it helps Molly, our child.
Are there challenges that you face when seeking to do institutional changes?
I think that anytime you try an initiative of this magnitude, this is an ocean liner that has traveled down the wrong ocean for a countless number of years. It is difficult to turn it around. It's not going to turn around on a dime, but we have to start getting the crew that's on board to acknowledge we're going in the wrong direction. There are too many crew members in the Department of Health, in the Department of Education, in the Department of Correction. All of these agencies where we feed people, there are too many people who are non-believers. We have to start the process of getting the crew right. And once the crew understands what we have to do, then we can start moving the ship in the right direction. And one way of doing that is to make sure the passengers on the ship that are tired of being sick, tired of the exams, tired of losing loved ones, tired of watching their children pump themselves with asthma medicine, tired of watching their children become obese. That is going to be the issues that are going to allow us to get the crew in the right direction and finally turn the ship on the right path.
So when speaking about the crew, it makes me immediately think of, New York's finest and our first responders. Are there any initiatives in place or maybe something that you're working on to help bring a whole food plant-based lifestyle to the people that are, active online? They need to be agile in their mind as well as in their being.
Yes, Rip Esselstyn has done a great job in getting the firefighters to do these challenges. We want to continue to do that. We're having a conversation with the Department of Correction. Union head, COBA is the name, Correctional Officers Benevolent Association. We want to get the NYPD's union as well, the PBA, to get on board. So it's a process of having these conversations. And as a former law enforcement officer and a first responder, many of them are willing to listen and see, okay, Eric, let's look at what we're talking about. Because if you're self-insured or you're negotiating your insurance contracts, the cost of health care is really driving up the cost in many of these union contracts. We had a conversation with the Department of Labor, and many of the union heads are now trying to find ways to bring down their health costs. And so this is a great opportunity to engage in the conversation that we are engaging in.
The Journal of the American Heart Association came out with a study that showcased that low socioeconomic status is directly correlated with higher rates of heart disease and heart failure. And with your background of where you grew up and where you were born in Brownsville, grew up in Jamaica, Queens, what can you say to inspire others that come from, hardworking families, lower income status, that feel like they're living in a food desert, or that a plant-based or vegan lifestyle seems like it's for the wealthy?
I believe, number one, this is not a food desert. Food desert is because you don't have the access to the water. This is food apartheid. There's more than enough healthy food in this city and in this country, but the intentional behavior not to give people access to the food is nothing short of the apartheid mindset. And what we are encouraging people to do, we want to meet people where they are. Not where I am, but where they are, and take them where they ought to be. We're finding their pathways of seeking information and who influences them. We're partnering with our churches, with our civic organizations, with other groups, with the healthcare leaders in the city, such as Health First. We want to start meeting people where they are and showing them how this is not a white thing, this is not an affluent thing, this is a health thing. And by doing that, showing them in a creative way, having people in the music industry come up with rap records that talk about the apartheid of food, showing the connectivity between slavery and food. Much of the food you see that is over proliferated in communities of color in particular come from a slave plantation mindset. We want to educate people so they can educate themselves on how to live a healthy lifestyle by the food that they eat. They're killing themselves every day with what they have on their plate, and we want to show them they don't have to.
Well, excellent. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and we're excited to see your journey continue, especially as you have your eyes set to become New York City's mayor in 2021.
2021, we're going to be one of the most healthiest cities
in the world.
That's right.
In the world. Well, excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You know I was here. I am making, I have some kale, some celery, my favorite neutral blender where you can put in your items. These are lentils. I use my neutral bullet to make the soup, which is really easy to make. I make a soup base out of this, and then I just pop it in. Which is one of my real secrets, is green tea and hibiscus tea. People make a big mistake. When I put my hibiscus tea and green tea leaves inside my soup, because you wouldn't take collard greens, make collard greens, and then throw away the greens and drink the juice. So you shouldn't do the same with your leaves from your tea. You should consume the leaves from your tea. And that's what I do. I put them in my little soup here, and I do something else that I enjoy doing. I mix fruit, a little chopped up cut of fruit, because it gives it a sweet taste inside my food. And it's a real balance. So I'm on the run. So I have my little sealer here, and I'll take it with me in the car. These are my favorite also. My noodles People love pasta, and they don't realize that this is lentil pasta, 100%. No process. It's just all lentil process. And since I don't want to mix all my spices together, I grind up all my spices into a blend. This is every spice you can think of. This is about 20 spices in here, and it's all in the blend. I just mix it in my cup. So this is not part of the script. They just jumped in the kitchen. They found me.
I love it.